Today, I'm going to give an in-depth overview of what Project 2025 is, who supports it, and what it's meant to achieve. Even if Project 2025 were never to come to fruition, it's important to understand it in order to better comprehend the current political landscape and the potential future direction of conservative policies in the United States. This project reflects a broader ideological movement and provides insight into the goals and strategies of influential conservative think tanks and their allies. By examining Project 2025, we can anticipate potential policy shifts, understand the motivations behind certain political actions, and be better prepared to engage in informed discussions about the future of American governance. So let's get started. Project 2025 is an initiative aimed to reshape the U.S. government along conservative lines. Trump has said he has nothing to do with the project or know anything about it, but the project aligns with his policy goals and involves many of his former administration officials. The project is an initiative by the Heritage Foundation, a prominent right-wing think tank aimed at dismantling aspects of the government that it believes conflict with conservative ideology and implementing extreme conservative policies in a potential second Trump term administration. Trump's vice presidential pick, J.D. Vance, has close ties with the Heritage Foundation and its president, Kevin Roberts. Vance even wrote the foreword for Roberts' new book. The first part of Project 2025 is a 900-plus page manifesto that outlines changes desired by over 100 conservative groups if Trump wins again. Subsequent parts will suggest personnel and provide training on how government should operate. One component of the project is a transition playbook for the incoming president to use to implement policies. The guidebook is titled Mandate for Leadership: The Conservative Promise. It details how an incoming conservative president could dismantle Biden administration directives and realign government operations around right-wing ideals. While not explicitly aimed at Trump, the project serves as a conservative blueprint for any future Republican president, reflecting a collective vision for transforming government operations and executive authority. The proposals within the manifesto echo many of Trump's past statements and actions, indicating what might transpire if he secures another term in office. Now we will take a look at some of the policies Project 2025 intends to implement. Education. The manifesto suggests a conservative president should dismantle the Department of Education, an idea that Trump has also supported. At most, it says the department should be a statistics gathering agency that disseminates information to the states. It wants to phase out Title I funding that goes to low-income schools. And it would allow states to spend federal education money without direction, giving states leeway to use money meant for specific purposes for whatever they want as long as it relates to education. The project says a conservative president should push policies to support universal voucher programs, in which public money meant for public schools funds private school tuitions. The Heritage Foundation also wants to eliminate Head Start, a program that funds early childhood education for low-income families. Thanks to Head Start, millions of children have access to preschool education. Abortion. Project 2025 doesn't explicitly call for a national abortion ban, but its policies would aggressively limit access to abortion across the country. The manifesto suggests the Department of Health and Human Services should rename itself the Department of Life, explicitly rejecting the notion that abortion is health care. It calls for eliminating Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, and its programs that do not respect human life and conscious rights and undermine family formation. The health department would not consider abortion to be health care and would fund studies about the risks and complications of abortion. It also says the CDC should help promote fertility awareness methods of family planning. It proposes to collect data on abortions across the states, abortion survivors, and maternal deaths related to abortion. States that don't share data on abortions within their borders would see federal funds withheld because liberal states have now become sanctuaries for abortion tourism. This data collection would include demographics to assess whether any groups are targeted by abortion providers. The project aims to limit the use of abortion pills. The plan wants to make it harder for people to have access to the medications, which help terminate a pregnancy very early on. The project also wants the FDA to reverse its approval of one of the medications and states that as an interim step, the government should outlaw telemedicine abortion care or the mail ordering of abortion pills, which the project calls a gift to the abortion industry. It also says that U.S. health policies should never place the desires of adults over the right of children to be raised by the biological fathers and mothers who conceived them. Diversity issues. Attacks on diversity programs and the rights of LGBTQ+ people are infused throughout the project. Nearly all agency-specific chapters mention that any effort to promote diversity or recognize the existence of LGBTQ+ people should be ended. The project also calls for the government to protect the ability of people to refuse to participate in same-sex unions or gender-affirming care, allowing businesses, healthcare workers, and adoption agencies to discriminate if something goes against their conscience. It wants to reverse policies that include sexual orientation as a protected class, for discrimination and end collection of data on non-binary people. The manifesto generally labels these initiatives woke and wants to drive them out. The manifesto defines marriage as between a man and a woman and wants to see policies that promote stable married nuclear families. Its education section calls for scrapping LGBTQ+ and diversity-focused programs, eliminating trans girls' ability to play in girls' sports, and preventing kids from using names or pronouns different from their birth certificate without parental approval. Federal workers. One of the project's largest changes would install far more political appointees beholden to a conservative president's agenda to all levels of government, and firing civil servants with expertise who often serve as a check and balance to executive power. The civil service is largely made up of employees who remain in their roles regardless of which party controls the White House. They have employment protections, allowing them to keep their jobs when administrations change. Only about 4,000 federal employees are currently in politically appointed roles, out of more than 2 million civil servants. Schedule F, however, would increase the number of political appointees. The exact number of federal government employees this would affect isn't known, but some estimates say about 50,000 people would lose their jobs if their roles became political ones. Trump issued an executive order making the change near the end of his term in office, and the project wants to revive it. It makes suggestions in most chapters of different roles that should become political appointments. For instance, in the State Department, the project says, no one in a leadership position on the morning of January 20th should hold that position at the end of the day. Climate change. The project's goals include eliminating much of the government's policies on climate change and enabling more drilling. It de-emphasizes renewable energy by cutting funding for certain offices aimed at energy transition. At the Environmental Protection Agency, the project wants to move away from climate-related goals, saying the agency is being co-opted by the left for political ends by embedded activists. The chapter on the EPA suggests eliminating the Office of Environmental Justice and External Civil Rights. It wants to lessen regulations on clean air and water and prioritize the needs of businesses and private property owners. A fact check made by Project 25 said it was true that they want to increase Arctic drilling, calling the area of immense strategic importance to America and in need of development of vast energy resources. Free weather reports are also at risk, with the project proposing to dismantle the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which houses the National Weather Service, and privatize some of its functions. Research on issues like greenhouse gases would be diminished because the research arm is, quote, the source of much of NOAA's climate alarmism. Taxes. How the project's tax proposals could affect you is complicated. It generally suggests moving away from the 7 tax brackets now in place to 2 tax brackets at 15% and 30%, with the 30% rate kicking in for people who make more than $168,000 and eliminating most deductions, credits, and exclusions. It also calls for some kind of national consumption tax, like a national sales tax, business transfer tax, or a specific type of flat tax, because it would be the, quote, least economically harmful way to raise federal tax revenues. The project goes on to say, a conservative president should also seek to repeal subsidies included in the Inflation Reduction Act, like those aimed at green energy. It also wants to make permanent Trump-era estate and gift tax exemptions and reduce rates for these types of taxes, which affect a tiny subset of Americans with high wealth. The project proposes decreasing corporate taxes to 18%. The corporate tax rate is currently 21% after cuts in the Trump era. The project claims the corporate income tax is the most damaging tax in the U.S. tax system. While the project doesn't specifically call for reducing or eliminating overtime pay, it proposes a host of changes to who can receive overtime pay and how it would be calculated that could result in lower overtime pay for some workers. Immigration. The project aims to crack down significantly on immigration, both legal and otherwise. The plans would entail mass deportations, including unaccompanied minors, and via raids at work sites. It would also allow immigration officers to carry out civil arrests, detention, and removal of immigration violators anywhere in the United States without warrant where appropriate. It also says that when there's a mass migration event, the Homeland Security Secretary will stop migration from specific countries. Limits would be imposed on visa programs as well, generally hewing toward allowing high-wage specialty workers into the country. And there would be a premium processing visa option that would allow people to pay more to get faster service. If there are any backlogs for visas, the project says the government should pause applications until those backlogs are cleared. The immigration plans extend well beyond the border. The project wants to block federal financial aid to college students if their state allows in-state tuition access for undocumented immigrants, including Dreamers. And it would ban people from receiving any federal housing benefits if someone in their home doesn't have legal status. For cities that don't adhere to the immigration hardline, The project suggests a conservative president should withhold federal disaster funding until they get in line. This would include states where migrants can get driver's licenses and places that don't share immigration-related data with the federal government. Veterans benefits. For veterans, the project notes that more disability ratings were added in recent years for health conditions of which, quote, some are tenuously related or wholly unrelated to military service. Recognizing it is politically charged to get rid of these disability-related benefits, the project suggests some disability awards for future veterans could be revised, while preserving them fully or partially for current beneficiaries. Pornography. As part of its social policy ideas that align with right-wing Christian values, the project wants to criminalize the production, distribution, and consumption of pornography. On Project 2025's platform, it states that pornography has no claim to First Amendment protections, and its purveyors are child predators and misogynistic exploiters of women. Their product is as addictive as any illicit drug and as psychologically destructive as any crime. For liberals, Project 2025 has emerged as a significant concern, while conservatives view it as a potential hindrance in their electoral pursuits. Despite Donald Trump's attempts to distance himself from the initiative, it remains closely tied to his political ambitions and the broader conservative agenda. Understanding Project 2025 is crucial for both sides. Liberals need to grasp its implications, while conservatives should be aware of how it reflects their values. The manifesto portrays an ongoing struggle for America's future, emphasizing the need for vigilance, engagement in the upcoming election, and beyond.